Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Are you ready to learn and discover new ideas? We want to hear from you. Share your questions, thoughts, and ideas for the Paradigm Playbook podcast. We value your input and want to create episodes that match your interests. Leave a comment or send us an email at playbook@paradigmplaybook.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbook. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Good morning, David.
Sir, how are you today?
Good.
So, we've been through a lot of different topics. I think this is, probably 60 to 65th episode, something like that, Steve, right?
Yeah, and we're landing on your favorite topic today.
Yeah, and I approach this subject a little differently than, say, an accountant would, right? And the subject of today is understanding the financials of a business and what does it mean to you as a small business owner in the sports arena, really in any arena. What is it to understand your numbers and the bottom line and the accounting and how you're sort of this dovetails into a lot of different conversations about corporate structure, about accounting principles, about things that you do to better the bottom line, taxation, et cetera, employees, payroll, 1099s, all that stuff comes into play as you start mastering the financials of a business. The one point that I'll make to every single entrepreneur out there is if you're not studying the numbers of your business and understanding how your business runs and what numbers matter, you are not putting yourself in a position to be an expert in your field. And so part of this is, in the first 5 years, you're just trying to get to a profit. You're just trying to get a bottom line that works. Once you've eclipsed that 5 year and you're no longer a victim of the potential statistic of failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then if you want to expand, understanding the books is huge.
Absolutely. And I think we have to look at it from, you look at your books from all kinds of different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that it matters which, but in the sports world, which is where I live, I'm
Mm-hmm.
used to. So I can look at, I study gross revenues, gross profit by category. So I'm looking at
how much walks in the front door and then how much you keep.
Yeah, well, I look at the gross profit. So I'm only applying the costs that apply specifically to that category that I'm working with. And then we're going to take out the underlying costs of the whole business and get to a net profit from that. So there you may be allocating that by number of kids, number of square feet, and anything. But the start of it is gross revenues in for that program, the related direct costs that are coming out of it. So let's take, you're in any sport that has a elite or team component.
Mm-hmm.
The team component is, there's so much for team revenues coming in, and then you're paying the coaches if you have uniforms, if you have special equipment, anything that's delegated directly to that program then comes off, and that's where you get your gross profit. So am I in line so far?
Yeah, I'm rapping with you.
Okay, and then at that point, if that program is, and this is where it gets fuzzy, if it's using full-time 20% of your area, then you're going to take 20% of your overhead cost, which is rent, insurance, and all that. Sometimes insurance in the sports business isn't allocated directly by revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a long conversation with an insurance agent, and I'm in the entertainment business technically, so my insurance is based on gross revenues. In the child development section, it's usually allocated based on heads, so the number of children. So you get a per if you have 500 kids and you're paying $8 a kid or whatever that cost is, that's
Yep.
where your insurance comes in. Mine comes in different. So if you're moving, I just had this conversation, we're moving a ninja facility from a gymnastics complex into a skate park complex, and the insurance totally changes. So it's interesting, but that's just one way of looking at the revenues that are coming into the business.
Yeah. So, and I think there's some kind of truths that you have to think about in business, right? You have square footage, and then you have a total amount of time that you can allocate the square footage. I think it's unfair for some companies to, it's not a 24-hour clock that your facility can be filled.
No.
So you have to pick the time frame and allocate the square footage according to the time frame with which you can fill it, right? So I'll give you a for instance. If you have let's use the baseball space at Grand Slam, a certain amount of square footage, but are you doing baseball lessons, while kids are in school? Probably not. And so you can't assume that space is going to be filled. You still have to cover the overhead for that space, but it has to be truncated into the time you have to fill that space, which is arguably between 3 and closing time, right?
Yeah. So if you're working with 8 hours at 100% occupancy, you're using 8 hours.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, out of that 8 hours, and it changes on weekends, but let's say it was 7 days a week, you have X number of hours, and then how much of that is allocated to class training, or what we categorize as rental.
Yep.
That's outside team rental. So we're tracking team rentals, and they're taking 30% of that, of the available hours. So that's how we factor occupancy in there. You're right. We don't do a 24-hour clock. Now, occasionally do we get, I just booked a midnight to 4 a.m. post prom party. Well, that takes it right off the charts because there's no allocation. That's beyond 100% occupancy.
Yeah.
Now we're using that space differently.
And what would be fantastic in that is if that's just pure profit, right? Because now you take the overhead, the person's got to run the facility, the electricity, but because you've covered your rental or your mortgage, right? Your rent or mortgage in your standard 8 or 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock typical space, that 8-hour window, you shouldn't have to allocate, if you're running a good business, you shouldn't have to allocate money from that event to the rental, right? Or to your rents or to your mortgage. So I was consulting with a small business owner, and I want to shift gears and explain another kind of nuance of understanding the books. I was consulting with a up and coming pest control company, really, really strong business model. When he set it up, he did it the right way. High customer service, high contact, great. And beyond that, they're excellent at doing it. And he got up to a point where he was like, I don't know that just continuing to expand my current model is the best way for success. And I said, well, tell me about your business. And he started to tell me about the service and all this stuff. And I said, no. Tell me about the numbers in your business. Let me understand. Are you a master of the books? Because you can't go into acquisition of another business unless you're a master of your own books. And therefore you can then master and look at the financials of another book. Right. So, and he was, there's a lot of mom and pop bug control companies out there that, they're 65, they're done. They want to be out. They don't want to sell it for nothing. They don't want to just close the doors. They want to sell it for something. But unless you are, and again, talk about gymnastics facilities, talk about gymnastics programs, talk about any kind of program out there. If you don't understand all of the pieces of your own business, you can't turn around and evaluate the value of someone else's business at the same time, and whether you go into the M&A world. Right now, there are consultants that do it. There's certainly people that can help you on that, but fortune favors the prepared mind. And, just like if I'm ever in a legal conversation, I have done my research. I have put my thoughts on paper. I've thought through the pros and cons of my arguments to then talk to the attorney. I don't just go to the attorney, hey, tell me what to do here.
It's interesting because I'm working with a client right now, and we're moving from an 8,000 square foot gymnastic facility to probably a 40,000 square foot. And within that, they're adding a ninja program, they're adding a dance club, and an adult fitness center. So there's added revenues coming in, but the sports facility that goes into it saying we've got 8 or 10,000 square feet, we're busting at the seams, we need to move, we're going to double our space.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a more detailed calculation. So if you go back and can say, so two things. One is we have to go back to your pricing. Make sure that that's right first. But if you can take your revenue, break it down by athlete, and then say by adding for every 1,000 square feet, we can add, another 20 customers, and the customers are bringing in, we can already look at what the average customer return is. So they're all numbers that you need to know. And, and that's where it's so interesting because, I'm always consulting with sports businesses. You're consulting on the other side. But what it comes back to is the same thing.
Always.
Me adding another gym or a ninja center is no different than your pest control adding 2 more trucks.
Exactly.
So they're
100%.
doing something. So you have to be tracking by something.
Yep.
So if it's not square foot, then maybe yours is by truck. And if you're doing your pest control by truck and you're saying, within our radius, we have 8 trucks on the road, we get 30% of the available, but so the numbers are all there. So something else is going to have to change if you're going to grow.
Well, yeah. And so when I started consulting with him, it was essentially, how do I expand? And let me tell you how the story started, because this is a great story. It was Memorial Day. He's a veteran. It's a veteran-owned business. It was Memorial Day, and he shows up to my house to spray my lawn. And I walk out. I was poolside. I walk out of the backyard. I'm in a bathing suit. And I said, "What are you doing here? It's Memorial Day." And he goes, "Well, I got to get it done. Like I don't have an option." I said, "You need to get another truck and another guy. Like you shouldn't. First of all, you're a veteran. Second of all, meaning Memorial Day, that's not the
that's
day.
His holiday.
Yeah, correct. And second of all, like if you have this much business where you have to be out, then get another truck, get another guy, right? You're in that busting at the seams world.
So here's a question for you: was he at the mindset of, yeah, but growth is just too confusing?
I think he was at the mindset of you don't know what you don't know. And no one had ever said so bluntly to him as I did standing in my driveway, "Dude, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, tell me what a truck costs, $35,000. Tell me what an employee costs, $35,000. So we're 40,000. I don't know what it costs in there, but you're talking about 70 grand. What was your profit last year?" And he was like, "Well, we made above paying himself. He had made like 100,000. I said, "So you've already got it. You've already got the money. Mm-hmm. You're reinvesting in the company now. Let's say you've got enough right now you have enough for 1.5 trucks is arguably where he was, right? Because he was having to double down on time." I said, "So what do you do in that sequence? You go sell more, go find more customers, throw an ad out there, do the word of mouth, show up to the networking group, whatever it may be." And so in doing so, he filled the second truck, bought a third truck, filled the third truck, bought a fourth truck, filled the fourth truck. And it was like a snowball effect when it opened. And his big thing was he didn't know, could he take on another truck payment? Could he do it? And I said, "Dude, it comes down to the numbers. It's very simple."
So you develop those numbers. I was just meeting with the owner of Multifunding, who's going to be on we're going to do a podcast with a Playmaker episode with him. But he was saying, first and I like this, he differentiated investors and lenders and basically said investors buy a dream, lenders, manage risk.
Yeah.
So part of that growth thing is understanding the risk. So what numbers do is help you understand or mitigate risk.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you go into it blind and say, you know what, business seems good, I'm going to get another truck, then that's not good. Or we have a waiting list.
Yeah.
So this, you've heard my rant on waiting lists. But the first thing is you have to understand that you're maximizing your space and your spend.
Yep.
And then you can go out and decide, okay, to do growth. So the whole thing comes down to, and I won't say an exit strategy, but a change strategy. So I firmly believe that, you get bigger, you get smaller, one or the other. You're not standing still. So that doesn't work. So that your exit strategy may not be for you to turn over the keys to the business, but exit strategy is still your exit from day-to-day operations.
And that was the big thing for him, is like he was exhausted because he's running 12-hour days 6 or 7 days a week in high season. I'm going, dude, you can't. And the funny part was it was more profitable after he expanded than he ever imagined. And so that exercise, and the reason I tell that story is because that exercise in its initial conversation spurred a whole bunch of things. But the number one thing it spurred on him was he had to dig into his numbers. And he's since bought out 3 other shops and expanded by acquisition. So organic growth plus acquisition is where now he's got a fantastic business. It's regenerative in its nature. It's subscription-based services. I mean, it's everything that business owners talk about.
But he started with a customer service model that was duplicable.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
Repeatable, scalable process, right? And, the big... So, and I think this goes back to E-Myth, Steve, and that entrepreneurial seizure. Was that E-Myth?
Yeah. E-Myth Revisited was the last edition.
Paradigm Playbook offers business, reset, and expansion expertise. Visit ParadigmPlaybook.com to see how we can assist you.
The entrepreneurial seizure where you go, I can do this better.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are subsequent seizures inside of business ownership that I don't think people are aware of. When they get to the point where it's like, you're buying that 40,000 square foot space, or you're renting a new space that's 40K. You've only been in 8. Like, whoa, there's 32,000 of unknowns in that, right? So you better have a solid plan and a solid marketing strategy to get there. But more importantly, you better know the numbers. What if the adult fitness center doesn't bring, like, what's the minimum that's got to bring in to make sure you can cover? What's the minimum you have to do in each of those spaces in addition to the 8,000 square feet that you were busting at the seams at, right? And I think the absolute win would be if the current client base that is sort of jam packed in there can cover the cost of the 40,000 square foot space, or maybe a little bit of expansion, and it's not a huge thing to jump and say, hey, we can take our time and generate good clientele in that fitness space.
So just as we, as I encourage them to write a business plan for the new businesses that are coming in, then you also need to write a business plan for the expansion of the current business, how you're going to accommodate more. So how many more coaches are you going to need? So if your gymnastic goes from 8 to 16, you need twice as many coaches? Or does it become more profitable because you can handle more athletes and with 25% more coaches? So all those things. So I'm big on return on square foot. That's huge for me. I'm also big on allocating specified equipment to specified programs. So if the team program needs a new balance beam or ballet bars or 2 new pitching machines or whatever that program needs, that cost is covered there. That cost doesn't get spread out. If we need a new roof, we all programs pay for the new roof.
Agreed.
I think the big point that you made early in this was understanding the true expense of the individual program, not the whole, is a good starting point. Meaning if you have that, that team or that group session what expense does that session have to cover in its own right? And then where is the profit in it, right? And what's the target of profit? Because you can adjust. This all helps in that pricing conversation that we've had before. If I know that I can accommodate 20 students in a session, and I know the cost for an hour of the coach, and I know the cost per square foot of space rental and the overhead, like a nugget overhead number, and I'm charging $100 and it just covers everything. Well, I know that I have to now bake in some profit into that, or I'm out of business next year, right? So then
need to take my price from $100, what I thought was $100 as a starting point, to $125. Now I've got 25 per head of. So find that coverage number and then target that profit, right? Are you okay with a 15% profit? Do you want 20% profit margin? Do you want 25? The other thing you have to keep in mind is, while it's profit this year, next year it may be that new roof. Next year it may be that expense that you didn't see coming that you have to brace for, or you're going back to, the loan risk situation.
Well, so every program should be contributing to retained earnings that are going in there. So it's preparation for that roof.
Yep.
But I think too often we take detail. I always talk about the 13 revenue streams, which is now 15 revenue streams at our business. But I have a revenue stream called vending. I have basically 3 vending machines, but they're a separate revenue stream. They take up 16 square feet. So I know what that is and what the return is, but that comes out of the mass when I'm doing the whole thing. So if I use 500 square feet for that, and I'm running on 30,000 square feet, I'm running on 29.5. So that changes all the numbers.
Yep.
I also don't automatically assume that, it's like the people that have, like, say you develop a Division I pitcher and the whole town knows about it. So you get more, you may or may not. I don't credit that towards marketing, but some people do. So I don't know if you'd say, well, and I think sometimes we make the excuse, I can put extra money into my elite program because it's what promotes the other. So my question then is, so if the very beginners or the low-level people aren't coming to you because they're afraid that you only train elite athletes, are you deducting that from your numbers?
Well, and I think there's another truth to that, right? Just by virtue of getting an athlete to an elite place does not mean that it is affecting your marketing. If you want it to affect your marketing, you have to tell the story, right? You have to spread that story. You have to, but in that case, let's say you start with a child and they're, 6 years old, and all of a sudden they're Division I baseball player or gymnast or whatever it may be. You got to use that. You got to take it back to where they started, so you can tell the story through the whole thing. And if you're not communicating that story, right, it is not a marketing win. It is not a targeted environment where you can sort of put forth a return on investment model.
Yeah, I think storytelling is a whole nother podcast that we get into, because it should be a big part of your business. But I was just saying that I don't let that affect the mathematics of how I'm figuring this. And I think, so Patrick Bet-David always says, the secret of business is solve for X. And there's an X in everything. It's like, put everything in a simplified algebraic equation and solve for X. And that's what you can do. And by understanding the formula that you're solving for should relieve the fear or of the risk that you're going. But there is risk in everything. You expand your business, you spend a lot of money, there's risk. You have to understand it, and you have to understand yourself and how adverse you are to risk and how accepting you are of risk. So there's a lot you have to take in.
And I think there's another thing that comes with this, and you can start to see how this is all intertwined and kind of tangled together. But if you expand by space or by client base, and let's say you're used to 5 coaches and you're also a coach yourself, but you're a business owner, part-time coach. The moment you take that expansion to, say, 10 coaches, you have to spend more time managing than you can spend in the sessions. And so I think a lot of business owners, particularly in the sports arena, always fall back to, hey, well, I can always jump in and do that session. And so they spend less time managing, training, and teaching up their people because they're sort of the fail-safe. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to assume. And it's also a safety net for most people, right? I'll use the example of the person that bartends on the weekends. They've got a day job, they're learning, but they bartend on the weekend. And every single weekend they come home with, $1,000 cash in their pocket from bartending. And, they have a fail-safe. So do they invest 100% in what they should invest 100% in, which is long-term future success as opposed to the bartending, right? You're going to get to a point bartending where your feet are tired, your back's tired, you don't want to do it. You don't want to be out when everybody else is having a good time working. And if you always have that sort of support mechanism monetarily, do you put in the time you should on the other side? And I think it's the same thing in coaching. And I use myself as the example, Steve. For a long time, I made money on the side giving private instruction at Grand Slam and All-Star Baseball Academy. It was always a thing that when I got home from my day job, I went to work that night. Now I was young and trying to make it for myself and needed the money to do it. But as you watched me progress in success in my own business, it was really hard for me to let go of the coaching. It was really hard to say, you know what? No, I'm not going to go make 50 cash on someone, right? It's a hard thing to do, but I also found it to be a distraction.
But so it's interesting because your passion for doing this has never gone away.
No,
it just switched from income production to family time.
Correct.
So you're doing the same thing. I could make a case probably that you're coaching more hours now than you were back then.
Yeah.
But it's not as mentally tiring because it's family. It's you're coaching your kids' programs and all that. So I think there's a lot of considerations in growth. So I was reading a book recently, The Growth Dilemma, and this was interesting. He said, there's a chapter early in the book called The $1 Million Question, and it basically says, I'm going to give you $1 million. Can't spend it on a car. You can't spend it on your house. Basically, you can't spend it on you. Has to be spent on your business. How are you going to spend $1 million? And then after you answer that question, now justify it to me that I'm going to ever get repayment of it.
Yeah.
So
I know exactly how I spend it.
So you go in, start and think, I got $1 million. And if you think you never have to repay it, you may go out and buy yourself a Maserati. You may do weird things, but then when it gets put, now you start doing the math. What would I spend that $1 million on that's going to return something so I grow and I'm giving a payback to where the $1 million come from? And that's what the lender wants to hear.
Do you know what I would spend it on right now, Steve?
What will you spend it on?
More than anything else, I would spend it on marketing.
Yeah, and in my world, in the sports world, we spend the least amount on marketing. We probably have the smallest marketing budgets of anyone,
I'd spend every dime because that's the only thing I know I can convert. Right? If I spend it on new infrastructure, what happens? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it changes the shift. But if I know if I go out and I hit with $1 million, how many people could I hit? How many people could I draw in? It give me the problem.
But you're going to have to retain some of that to support what you're driving with the marketing.
No, because the marketing turns into the earnings on the other side, so it supports itself. So
eventually,
well, not my model. I'll turn it on right now.
Okay, well, I don't have the $1 million with me.
I thought we were negotiating.
That was a bit of a tease. I'm sorry.
Shoot.
Yeah. Let's go back to what we said originally. It's a matter of understanding the numbers within your business and taking a look at it from every direction that you can think of to say, okay, the square foot, do you need more square feet? So one of the things I'm doing with all my clients now, so I'm doing a lot of expansion consulting right now, and everybody wants to grow. And, and they want to spend it on silly things. Every baseball coach, every baseball wants a full-size infield. And can't show me the return on square foot on that. So like I'm the wet blanket when it comes to that. They all want to, the gymnastic clubs want to put a bigger pit in. I can't see the return. So I'm the wet blanket. The one thing I am encouraging everyone to do is add flex space to every facility. So what happens when that person comes in, like say all sports facilities do birthday parties. What's somebody comes in and say, hey, I want to rent your space out for a party, but I need a dance floor. If you don't have that flex space, you lose that account. I just had one walk in. I don't know if I told you this story. A local high school wants to rent my facility from 12 midnight to 4 in the morning for a post prom. So to me, that's off occupancy. So you talk about something that drops to the bottom line. That's it. And we gave them a price, and they said okay, and we said, and it's going to take 4, people that we will have there, not to run the show, but to monitor the facility, and they paid for that as well. So if you have flexibility in what you're doing, you leave yourself open for a new income stream that you don't know right now.
Yeah, 100%.
It's I would say, measure every way you can, square foot, kids, program. You don't put all your, if you're doing, let's say you're doing soccer and you make money for private instruction, group instruction, large group clinics, and games. There's 4 income streams.
Yep.
So measure all 4.
Every way you get a check written to you and every way you write out a check, you should understand.
And they don't, those 4 income streams aren't running at the same gross profit. If you dig into it, and I've done this, I've charted this all out, they are dramatically different. Like one of those is twice as profitable as the others.
Yep.
And that's the part of it. So if you're getting your $1 million and spending on it, promote the part that's giving you that big return.
Absolutely.
So anyway, we could talk about numbers. I know it's your baby. You love it. But
yeah, if you want to be a business owner and you want to be a CEO business owner, you want to be at the top, then you've got to know this stuff. This is the type of stuff that makes a difference. M&A, expansion, growth, all that stuff. It comes down to money makes it happen, right? And this is in no way saying that profit is everything, but certainly profit is something that matters. And if you don't understand what you spend and what you earn and how it all takes place and what you can do to change the algorithm in your own business, you're missing the mark.
Yeah. And everybody says, their business is driven by passion, but the money permits the passion.
Agreed.
I mean, without the money, the passion is a nice dream, but it's not happening.
Absolutely.
So anyway, it's all good stuff.
All right, everybody. This has been Paradigm Playbook. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay tuned for our Playmaker episodes.
Yeah, we've got a couple good ones coming. We'll start going to send out announcements, but you can check out announcements usually on LinkedIn and Facebook and some of those
all
other
the different
places.
social medias.
Thank you.
Did we help you learn, grow, and improve? Leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. Thank you.